Interviewing employees about misconduct in the workplace can be one of the most difficult things an HR professional has to do, according to Dean Benard, president of Benard and Associates. Dean spoke with us at the 2013 HRPA conference about strategies that HR professionals might want to consider when conducting investigative interviews. You say there are 4 key aspects in interviewing. What are they?
The first phase is orientation. Orientation is where you're building rapport with the subject, you're helping them understand what their role is and why they're there, and basically working to garner their cooperation in the interview. After that, we get into narration and questioning. And I call it narration and questioning because I think that it's important in an interview to first allow the person to provide their narrative. So asking big, open-ended questions. What can you tell me about this particular situation? They give you their narrative, and then from there, you may have some more specific questions. So you start, I look at it like a funnel. You start big and open-ended, and you funnel and drill down to the very specific questions that might require a yes or no answer. After you've completed the narration and questioning, the next phase is summarizing. And so really that's a phase of the interview that you want to complete in order to make sure that you and the person you've interviewed understand what information's been passed along. So I want to go back to that person and say, okay, so what I've heard you tell me is this. Here's what I'm taking away from this interview, making sure that it's accurate. And the goal of the interview should be to ensure that you're getting the information that person has to offer in an accurate way. So the summarizing process does that. And then the final phase is closure. And closure is very important because closure allows you to continue that relationship after the fact. Because many times you have to go back and re-interview somebody. And so the closure phase allows you to give that person some summary of, well, you praise their effort, you've been very helpful, there may be additional information or additional questions I may have for you at a later date, and it keeps that door open for that relationship to continue if it needs to.
You also emphasize the importance of building rapport. Why is rapport building so important?
Build a relationship with the person that allows them a sense of comfort, that allows them to feel that they can share information openly with you and comfortably with you, that encourages them to be helpful to the investigation. Building rapport just opens the door for better communication and a more, hopefully, truthful and fulsome statement that you're going to get from that person. It's also a great opportunity to assess that person's communication style. How they speak, their tone, their volume, their body language, all of those things are important things to assess because later when you get into a phase of the interview where you might be asking those tough questions, you want to be able to compare if that body language or nonverbal communication has changed in any way because that might assist you in helping to assess that person's credibility.
What are some interviewing tips you can share?
One of the biggest things I think that's so important is be yourself. I think a lot of younger interviewers, people with a little bit less experience, they feel that they have to come across in a certain way. I have to, I'm the interviewer, this is going to go smoothly, I know what questions to ask. It's okay to just be yourself. Just let your own personality come out. Obviously be professional, but allow yourself to be yourself. If you forget, I've been in interviews and in the middle of the interview, I'll draw a blank. I'll say, and I'll say to them, there was a question I wanted to ask you. It's gone right out of my head. Can't believe that. I'll just sort of. It shows that I'm human too. It puts them at ease because they realize, okay, this guy's. He's just like me, right? He's no different than I am. There's also little things you can do, like, for example, asking a person to tell a story out of chronological order. It's a pretty well-established fact that you can't lie in reverse. So it's not like you're going to say to somebody, all right, I want you to tell me the story, but start at the end and work your way back to the beginning. That would be a bit ridiculous. So you might just ask a person to tell you about an event that's out of chronological order. You might say something like, you mentioned to me that such and such happened. And I know you said it before, but what was it that happened just before that? And you'll notice, if the person's telling the truth, they should be able to grab that detail very quickly. If they're sort of looking around and sort of hesitating, you can tell what they're doing is they're sort of taking themselves through the story from the beginning to that point to try and recall what that point was before. So in some circumstances, that can be a useful technique. It won't work in everything. It really depends on the complexity of what they're telling you and everything else, but it can be a helpful tactic.